Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a non-spoiler review for Scythe by Neal Shusterman. The premise for this book is that the world is now perfect, nobody dies of natural causes, there's no war, there's no disease, and as a result, the only thing that humankind has to worry about is overpopulation. To prevent overpopulation from happening, there are individuals called Scythes who are revered and respected, and they are trained to glean people is what they call it, but they're trained to go around and kill people. The book essentially follows two main characters, Citra and Rowan, and they are taken in by a Scythe and they're going to apprentice with him for a year, and at the end of that year, one of them will be chosen to become a Scythe and the other one will just have to go right back to their normal life. A world building element that Neal Shusterman incorporated in this book is the use of journal entries at the beginning of every chapter, so we kind of get to see inside the heads of different Scythes. Some of them are Scythes that existed before, some of them are Scythes you meet, some of them are Scythes that you don't like. And because this book takes place in the future of our own world, I didn't think that there would be a lot of world building elements to the book, but beyond just those journal entries, there are so many little details that Neal Shusterman outlines for his readers about what the world would look like if no one died. Because this book isn't necessarily fantasy, world building wasn't something I was expecting to get, but I absolutely love good world building in a book. I love when it's delivered in a way that doesn't feel info dumpy, which I did not feel this was done. I thought it always felt natural, and it felt like it would make sense. I mean, there were elements to it that you could kind of see maybe that's where the world would go someday. While I don't by any means think this book is prophetic, I did think that I could see it. I could visualize that being the future, and you know, it didn't feel like, oh, this is just so far-fetched, which is common in science fiction futuristic type books, and I didn't feel that. I felt like, wow, that would probably be what it would be like. Now, to touch on the morbid nature of the book, I think while yes, it has its morbid moments, the book really makes you think. It's incredibly reflective, and it definitely kind of hits home on the idea that a lot of us fear death, and I think a lot of us think that someday we'll come to terms with the fact that we're gonna die, and this book kind of explores, do we ever? Does it matter if you've lived what you think was a fulfilling life? Does it matter if you've had plenty of comforts in your lifetime, that you've never had to struggle? Does it matter that you've lived to be 300 years old? Are you ever really ready to die? There's plenty more things that it reflects on, but I don't want to give too much away because I think this book can be really moving and really powerful, and I don't want to rob you guys of that by telling you all these examples. So I'm just gonna say that I was blown away at some of the things I read, and I was like, oh, it's just so good. Another thing this book has going for it is that I couldn't quite see where the plot was going. I didn't really know what to expect, and there were a lot of, I wouldn't say plot twists necessarily, but there were twists and turns. I could never really, there was a couple things I guessed might happen, but in general, it wasn't super predictable. It wasn't like I knew every single thing that was gonna go down. So I did enjoy that element of it. There were things that surprised me. There were things that I was like, oh shoot. Something I think helped this happen was the fact that the writing was never overly poetic. It was never telling you what to think. It was never really flowery, but it was almost so simplistic that the rawness, it's a cheesy word, everything, how can I describe this? Okay, this is how I'm going to describe it. This is how I described it to my husband the other day. So, you know how when people make like steak, like people that are like, you know, pros at making a great steak, how it's offensive if you pull out like a ketchup packet and then like dip your steak in ketchup, because it's like, what? This is already everything it needs to be. Why are you adding more on top of it? So the way I looked at it is, there are some parts in this book that they just hit you, and they don't need to hit you and then have the author try to like add all this fluff around it, because it's already enough. I don't know if that makes any sense. Does that make sense to you guys? But I could definitely see where somebody might find the writing almost so straightforward that maybe it's off-putting if you don't like that writing style. Maybe you prefer the prose to be more poetic. Maybe you prefer the flowery writing style. I don't. I can appreciate it. Sometimes I think it's lovely, but in this case, I think it would have not fit the book at all. One thing that I really was bummed about with this book, at least my edition of it, it had a decent amount of typos. And I'm not talking like, oh, they used the wrong tense here and it's actually supposed to be this word or something. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking like the word you had a comma in the middle of it. They were only really in the first chunk of the book. After that, I didn't really see any, but it was a bit of a bummer because there was enough of them that it kind of stood out to me. So that's kind of my only real complaint. That, and I definitely thought chapter 2 in the book, which my friend who I buddy read loved chapter 2, so take this for what it is. I felt like chapter 2, the writing just didn't quite match the way the very opening was and the way some things came later. It almost, I don't know. I just thought chapter 2 was a little off, but otherwise, I don't have many negative things to say about it. The characters in the book, I think the author did a good job of really defining them in their thoughts and in their actions, and having them match up with their pasts, having them act in a way that is in accordance with how they were raised or the lifestyle they've lived in. And one particular character that is probably a new favorite character of mine would be one of the Scythes. I just felt this character, I'm gonna go off on a tangent here. It's very popular nowadays, and I love this, but I see it often, to have characters that are morally ambiguous and that they don't really follow a set moral code. There's definitely gray areas in the things that they do, and I love that because I definitely think it's realistic. All of us struggle with right and wrong. But this particular character in this book that I loved, I just thought had such a strong moral code and stuck to it. And I don't see that very often in books, and it is realistic. Like, we can all think of somebody we know that's super honorable, or we can all think of a mentor that they just define what it is to be a good person, and you just want to be like them, or you want to do things that impress them. And I just felt that this character was done so incredibly well, among other characters, but this one in particular stood out to me, not just in this book, but I think in books in general. Something else about this I was not expecting whatsoever is that there's some pretty funny moments in this book, and I wasn't expecting that because it is dark and it tackles some dark stuff, and I wasn't expecting to have a giggle here and there, but there were some moments that were genuinely funny. There was also some political intrigue in this book, and I don't want to touch on it too much because I do feel like getting into why there's political intrigue is a bit of a spoiler, but there is, which is awesome because that's one of my favorite things in books. And when I wasn't expecting it and I got it, I was like, oh, thank you. Overall, I absolutely love this book. It is a new favorite of mine. I think it's phenomenal. I would recommend it to anyone, with the exception of anybody who just really isn't into straightforward writing styles. If you really aren't into straightforward writing styles, this might not be the book for you. If you are a little uncomfortable with the premise, I could see, not being interested, but otherwise, this book, I really liked it. For those of you that have read it, let me know your thoughts on it. Let me know if you agree or disagree with some of the things I said. And if you haven't read it but you're interested, let me know when you're gonna read it, because you should read it as soon as you can. It's great. Anyway, if you liked the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the little bell icon to get notified when I post new videos, and check out some more of my videos right over here. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye.